Hi everyone, welcome once again to the Education Business Podcast. Today we're going to talk about time, speed, dreams, and limits. So, question to ask yourself, do you ever limit your dreams with the time element? And a really good way to think about this is, for example, if you said, I want to get to 6 figures in my business, you might think, well, I want to get to 6 figures in my business within 18 months, when you could actually maybe do it in 6 months, but you just believe you can't. Or maybe you're saying 6 figures because you don't feel like you have enough time to get to 7 figures. Does that make sense? Now, speed and time are both really important elements of business. I'm sure we all know that person who has had a business for 30 years and they grew it in the beginning and they made a success of it and they made it into a full-time job for them. But then if you talk to them about it, like they don't really know how they would sell it to anybody because it's all around them. It's very much linked to what they know. They say that they can't grow it because they understand their industry because they've been in it 30 years and nobody from the outside could understand. And if it was possible, they'd have definitely done it. But then equally, you can see other businesses that maybe fulfill the same function as them. And yes, okay, maybe it doesn't have the same kind of personality behind it because it's different, but it is possible to grow that kind of business. It's just that they haven't done it. So they've got the time element there, but they haven't really had the speed element there. We all know somebody who is maybe in that situation, which is not wrong. It's just a situation that they're in. Equally, we probably all know of somebody where you can see them take their business from 0 to 7 figures in 12 months, and you just wonder how on earth did they even manage to do that. So time and speed are very different things because you could have that going on at the same time. You could know somebody who's in the 29th year of business, coming up to 30 years, and you could know somebody who's in their first year of business. And generally, I think when people do work that fast, it's probably not the first year of actual business experience. It's probably the first year in that particular business. Luck can play a big part as well. But time and speed are very separate things. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is some of the conversations I've been having with you recently, my listeners. You know that I meet up with a lot of you around the country. Sometimes when I'm doing that, I pick up themes, or I pick up themes from things I see on social media as well. And the theme is that time in business does not equal experience. And it's just really important to say that because as business owners, what we want to do is open ourselves up to experience. We want to open ourselves up to experience because that actually means that we're having bigger problems. And when we're gifted bigger problems, we can work through those problems and then be gifted even bigger problems. And that not only grows us as people, but it grows our businesses, it grows our offering, it grows our impact, our reach, our revenue, and ultimately our personal wealth as well. So the time in a business does not equal the experience. And I feel like I really learned that and I couldn't quite articulate it at the time when it was happening. But in 2017, I've talked about this a lot before, at Classroom Secrets, we had a choice to basically fizzle out or go faster. And we chose to go faster. Now that faster was faster than we anticipated. And it caused us to experience things at speed. The world, the business, situations, the universe gave us lots of problems to deal with. And I know in the last 7 years, I've gained a lot of experience that some people will never get in 30 years. But it depends on the experiences that we expose ourselves to. Sometimes we think somebody might be able to help us because of the length of time they've been in business. But if you're not opened up to those experiences, it doesn't matter how long you've been in it, you've never had that experience, if that makes sense. And, I've often said before how grateful I am for all of those experiences in quick succession. I used to say that owning a business is like opening yourself up to having so many more experiences than normal people would have, which is true as well. And one of the other things that I say, and you'll know that I say this, is that 90% of learning how to run a business is on the other side of employing someone. There's so much at play there that you don't know until you do it. You think it will be the same, but as soon as you start taking on team members, there's dynamics, there's culture, there's you as a leader, there's so many things, including trying to make sure that your vision is still happening through other people. It brings in complication, and that's why some people never want to grow their businesses past themselves. But we also know that solopreneurship is ultimately a job, and it's very difficult then to build real value in that company and be able to sell that on at some future point. It's kind of like putting a lot of work in but never realizing the real value of that work. So why does it happen then? Why do some people go faster than others? Why do some people allow themselves to experience so much at speed and others don't? And it's because we put time limits on it. We bring in the time element. So let's just go back to that example of someone who's been a solopreneur for 30 years. What do you think their reaction would be if I said to them, right, let's get your turnover from 150,000 to $1 million in 18 months? It's likely that they'd laugh and come up with a plan that stated that it would take 10 years minimum. Now I want you to think about an entrepreneur like Elon Musk. He's probably thinking about taking a company from $0 to $1 billion in 18 months. And he's not pushing back. His mind is not pushing back on it. He's just believing that it's possible. So it's us that puts the time element in. And we do that based on what we believe is possible. And sometimes the thing to do is just to really step back and think, but what if it was possible? Now, it might be that you have big players in the market that you can look at and go, well, they did it, so it's possible. Or it might be that you've got to step back and really think about how you could disrupt the market and do things differently so that that big idea is possible, because there are plenty of companies out there that grow at pace and that grow at scale. But for us, particularly if you've been an ex-teacher, it's so easy to just do it small, stay in our small little box, and not actually open our minds up to what might be possible. But we can make that happen. We can step back and we can think, okay, how am I going to do this really big? How am I going to take this 1 million to 10 million? Or maybe you're going to say, how am I going to take this 1 million to 100 million? And what time frame is that going to be? And then how do we cut that time frame down? But the two questions to ponder. One, is your financial goal big enough, or are you limiting it with time, with your perception of what's possible in time? Yes, we have to make sure we can plan things out to make sure they are possible, but there's also an element of being audacious. So that's the first thing to think about. Are you setting a big enough financial goal? Or do you need to be a bit more audacious? Do you need to be a bit more risky, shall we say? And the second thing is, are you putting time limits in place based on what you perceive is possible from a risk-averse perspective? Are you being too conservative? Are you being too logical? And is there an argument to say that you need to step back and just be a bit more big picture thinking? And to finish, I thought maybe I should give you some ideas of what that might look like in your business. Here's one example. Way back when, after I'd started Classroom Secrets, a family member said to me that I should limit my income to be under the VAT threshold so I didn't have to pay VAT. And that surprised me, really. I can't remember how much it was at the time. Maybe it was about 80,000. I can't remember. But I knew that wasn't right. So the mindset there was keep the income under the VAT threshold, because we don't want to have to pay VAT on the whole lot. So there's that point where you tip over and you are worse off for a bit. You have to work harder to make more profit. But I knew then, even in that moment, that makes no sense, because that is very, very limiting. But you might have that mindset in your business. And I understand it might be different if you're a solopreneur where you are offering a service one-to-one and you do have a limit on time. I had a digital business And I knew that it didn't make sense to say, hang on, we're going to limit people to buy this service or product. I'm only going to let a certain amount of people buy it, so we stay under the VAT threshold. So that's one example of limiting yourself because you don't think it's possible. Another example is you might say, well, I'm very comfortable being a solopreneur. I don't want to bring anyone else into the mix. If I bring in another tutor, for example, well, I'm only going to make £10 on that person per session. So it's not worth the hassle. But there again, we're doing the same thing. We're not thinking big enough. It's not really about that one person bringing in £10 extra per hour. It's about the process of beginning that so that one day you'll have 50 teachers who bring in £10 extra per hour. But we can look at the small term things and let that limit us because we can't think big enough. Another example is believing that we can grow our businesses to be valuable businesses that maybe we might sell one day without actually investing in the team to really grow the thing, to be willing to grow the thing and have people step in and do the things that you do and get out of the way. We have to be willing to do that. And often we can put that barrier in and go, no, it's not possible. And the reason we do that, we put those limits in, is because we don't think we can achieve a certain thing by a certain date. But big companies don't think like that. They don't think like that. They don't give themselves limits. They don't say, well, we can only do another £50,000 this year. They'll say, oh yeah, let's do another 50 million. Now, I know that I'm talking about seriously big numbers. I know that we're in the education sector. But they don't limit themselves with time or with money. They think really big and then they work back from there. So have you identified anything that's holding you back right now? Is it holding you back from getting someone to help? Is it holding you back from talking to somebody about how they might be able to help you grow your business? Is it holding you back from taking that next risk? Because we're talking about risks here as well. And that's another reason why we do it, why we put the limits in place. Because we want to do it in the safest way possible. We're human beings at the end of the day, and that is how our brains work. So think about those two questions and see if you think that perhaps you're not moving forward as fast as you could do. You're not opening yourself up to the experiences that you could do because you were thinking about time limits and about what's possible in that time. Is it possible that something bigger is possible? So if you've been inspired by this, join Education Business Club. It's basically a platform where you get a mentor without having to speak to a mentor or pay the prices of a mentor. You can ask the questions that you want that aren't there, and I'll answer them, and they'll be there for everybody. It's kind of like the Netflix of having an education business mentor. You can go through the bits that you need, you can listen when it's appropriate to you, you can find the content that you want, and I'm sharing all of the things that I'm learning about business and that I have learned about business in the past, and how to make sure that you can build your business so that you're on a really successful and valuable trajectory in the long term. There are often so many things that we're not doing in our businesses that we should be doing, and this is one of the ways to find out what you should be doing and actually get on with doing it with other people who are doing it as well. Now, pretty soon, I'm going to be asking for guests to join me on the Education Business Podcast. I'm going to be interviewing people who have education businesses, who want to talk to me about what they've learned so far. So if you're one of those people who's interested in being one of the guests on the Education Business Podcast, then just drop me a little message on Instagram. It can be at Education Business Club or at Claire Riley Teacher Entrepreneur, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well. That's absolutely fine. They're the two places I generally hang out. Just let me know. I'll put you on a waiting list, and when the time is right, I will send out some applications and we'll get the ball rolling. And I'm excited to talk to you on the Education Business Podcast so that all the other people who are ex-teachers turned business owners or education business owners can learn from the valuable lessons that you've learned, and we can all keep learning together.